Hello, hello, everybody. We are back again, Lunas with Luke in the book of Acts alongside Willie James Jennings. Somewhere here. Let's see. It's backwards, I know. But there we go. How about that? This week we're looking at chapter 5 in the book of Acts. Let's see. I gotta go this way. Oof. Sorry. Chapter 5 in the book of Acts. Maybe I'll pull up a little bit of the All right. Here is a little bit of the story. But a man named Ananias, with the consent of his wife Sapphira, sold a piece of property. With his wife's knowledge, he kept back some of the proceeds and brought only a part and laid it at the apostles' feet. Just a quick note, you remember that in last week in chapter 4, we had the new community bringing their possessions and their common, sharing everything in common and bringing their possessions and things, the property they had sold and everything to the disciples' feet. So we have this apostles' feet echoed again. Ananias Peter asked, "Why has Satan filled your heart to lie to the Holy Spirit and to keep back part of the proceeds of the land? While it remained unsold, did it not remain your own? And after it was sold, were not the proceeds at your disposal? How is it you have contrived this deed in your heart? You did not lie to us, but to God." And when Ananias heard these words, he fell down and died, and a great fear seized all who heard of it. The young men came and wrapped up his body and then carried him out and buried him. After an interval of about 3 hours, his wife came in. Not knowing what had happened, Peter said to her, "Tell me whether you and your husband sold the land for such and such a price." And she said, "Yes, that was the price." Then Peter said to her, "How is it you have agreed together to put the Spirit of the Lord to the test? Look, the feet of those who have buried your husband are at the door, and they will carry you out." Immediately she fell down at his feet and died. When the young men came in, they found her dead, and they carried her out and buried her beside her husband. And great fear seized the whole church, and all heard of these things. It goes on to talk about a healing, but this is pretty much where Jennings picks up in this section. So we'll stop there for now. Oh, that's awesome. Bienvenidos. Los de Árbol de Vida. Some family, or at least brothers and sisters down in Matanzas. So wonderful to see you. Yeah. I hope all is well there or getting there. As you all continue to deal with the recovering from the fire at the depot or whatever you would call it there. So many prayers still going out to the folks in Matanzas. And our sister church of First Presbyterian Racine, Presbyterian Central de Matanzas. All right. All right, that was a good greeting. You threw me there. So anyway, we're looking at this rather crazy story of this couple bringing part of their proceeds to the apostles. And we'll get into what Jennings has to say here. Here's Mark coming in. Hey, Mark.
Hey, what's going on?
Oh, not much. How are you?
Oh, doing all right.
Good, good. Yeah, so just looking at the text in the Bible, and now jumping into the jumping over to the Jennings part, which is quite long. Yeah,
Yeah,
we probably be on this for a minute too. Yeah,
yeah. Oh yeah,
yeah.
no doubt.
So, anything you wanted to start with?
No, no. Go ahead, go ahead. Do your thing. I'm just pulling it up myself.
Yeah. Well, no, I was just, I just think that this is an interesting, interesting meditation on the family and the couple, and how that relates to the community at large. I think it's a, just it's a good thing to remind ourselves of, and to put ourselves, in this place, because I think in the church we rather automatically fall into what he talks about here of kind of idolizing the couple or the family.
Or feeling sorry for him.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Feeling sorry for him.
Yeah. So, and I think it is good to start off where he starts off here, though. The two kind of things that first pop out to me in this chapter, and I'll see if I can get it up here.
Okay.
Let's see. He says, the withholding is indeed the offense, and it signifies resistance to the new order where possessions will no longer divide and establish social hierarchies, and where living by faith overcomes the worship of the other gods, money and possessions. Yet the new is at play here in astounding ways. God is continuing to work the disciples saw in the body of Jesus. God is encircling violence and drawing down its access. So first of all, obviously the issue being the withholding of possessions, and not just withholding them in a sense of like, keeping them for yourself and not selling the property, but this kind of agreeing to that you're going to do something, but then not doing the full thing that you said you were going to do.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the story is even kind of more interesting than just being greedy. It's kind of like pretending to be generous, but not going all the way, I guess.
Yeah. I guess it's the couple did not really. I hate to use the word buy-in. That's the only word I can think of now. But
Right.
I guess the better word is they weren't really fully committed to the cause of being in community.
Right.
The I guess from Africa, the I am because we are, and we are because I am. I guess that's just did not ring for them.
Right.
It's more individualism.
Right. Yeah. 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 And I think it's just this, I mean, and obviously, we can't say much about them, without pointing the fingers at ourselves. I mean, so it's not necessarily that we, get on our high horse here about what they should have done, but it does offer this.
I was thinking about
of holding
again,
and keeping.
Thinking about
Go ahead.
those from Star Trek, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the one.
Right.
Which is then similar to the African saying, "I am because we are because I am," and that and what Jennings says later is that you belong to us, we don't belong to you. Is that the needs of the community come first.
Right.
And I as we think about the crisis that our society and to me again the biggest existential crisis we deal with climate change, and it's because just like this couple, we aren't committed to the fact that I have to make sacrifice in order that somebody else might not suffer the detriment. And folks don't see that. Oh, if I don't make changes, then that doesn't matter. Well, we see it does matter, but folks don't want to buy into that. It's just like Anubis and Sapphira, they didn't want to buy into the fact that it's not about us as in the couple, but it's about the needs of the community,
Right.
and the spirit pushing for the growth of the community, and so that everyone benefits, everybody grows, and there's no lack or need in the community.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's a matter of faith, right? I mean, you have to believe that the spirit is moving enough in the community that this, people will be sustained, people will be cared for, needs will be met,
Right.
Yeah. Well, so that's one side. And the other side that is interesting here is, this part here where he makes it very clear that there's no justification for killing in the name of Jesus. Indeed, they speak no curse, they conjure no evil force, they give themselves no right to take life. Such will never be given to the followers of Jesus. But there is violence,
Right. There is
but
violence.
I think that this,
Yeah.
Well,
I think you go.
I think I was going to say, I think they probably already checked out, but maybe they're still around. But just wanted to throw this up. This is the one of the Facebook accounts of the church that's our sister church in Matanzas, Cuba, for the First Presbyterian Church, and so they're saying hello. I don't know if you've seen the news, the last couple weeks that there was a big fire in Matanzas. That they have a big kind of oil depository, these big 8 huge containers for fuel, and lightning struck one of them.
Wow.
And I think they lost 4 overall, and it's a pretty bad, hard times all around, but to lose fuel at this time is not,
Is this a
not a
church
good
that
time.
your congregation is like supporting?
Yeah. So the
Yeah,
church has
great
been down there twice, and we've tried to offer, and they've come up, I think, once or twice to us. So, yeah, so that's that. And then Cheryl, let's see.
And I think she has a point. I'm sure they probably weren't the only ones. We only know about from the text this particular couple,
Right.
but I'm sure there's others. Probably were others, being human beings as we are, that probably felt
Right.
similar ways. Now, not everybody. I mean, it's a fairy tale to believe that everybody is committed and everybody buys in. It's just,
Right.
that's the fairy tale.
I am kind of, maybe, I don't know whether triggered is probably not the right word, but I am kind of struck by the way you worded this here. Or maybe the only couple that gave less than they pledged. It'd be interesting to, I don't know, our church does, I don't know if your church does pledging, like that method of kind of, you go through a pledge drive, and people claim what they're going to give you through so you can plan a budget for the coming year.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking that, this might be an interesting story to give at the end of the year, as people you're sending out the the notes to say how far or how close you are to your pledged amount.
Yeah. And I guess from reading the text, it appears like this couple wasn't a couple that was struggling. That seemed like to be, I won't say they were rich, but they were, they had seemed like to be, they were of decent economic means. That this transaction of giving would not have, put them out or anything.
Right. Yeah, no, but I think Cheryl's point is good. Is that, I mean, this is I think it's meant to be an exemplary story, and maybe whether it's whether it's the one they're picking on, to raise it up, or whether I mean, I imagine if this happened, it would, there wouldn't be as many cases. It's seems like a pretty strong deterrent for other people, in the community. Not, I mean, but not that we should make light of it in any way, but yeah, I imagine it's meant as a cautionary tale. And I think,
exactly.
Obviously, it also comes with these echoing words where, everybody brought the stuff that they had sold so it could be held in common to the apostles' feet. And then, this same action is being done again, but with these some change, some modifications and some lack of commitment. Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting, and it is interesting that you're just, we don't know all the details. We don't, there's not much detail given. Is it their guilt? Is it their shame? Is it their, what is it that causes them to, to fall out, or what,
Right.
we don't know.
We don't know. We only thing we can do is assume. Yeah. Only thing is assume. But I like that when you highlight that piece about it wasn't the disciples that caused them to lose their lives, because I mean, we look at things like the Crusades, in which folks, just went to war in the name of Jesus. I mean, and there's been other instances in history where the name of God has been used to commit all kinds of atrocities.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was listening to I think it was something with there's a professor. Her name is Joy James, and she's done a lot of work with political prisoners and that sort of thing. But she was talking about how she grew up in Texas, and her father was in the military. She grew up on military bases, and she remembers that there was a certain religious fundamentalist kind of line, about Jesus was going to come again and take everybody away, and leave kind of the questionable people behind. And she said, it's got to the point now where it seems like that the fundamentalists are imagining that Jesus is calling for some kind of genocide, that like, like that there's some kind of that they are supposed to participate in some kind of cleansing themselves, and it, I mean, unfortunately, it does seem that way in a lot of places, that there's this this new understanding of what the end times mean, and what the end is calling for in fundamental circles. That is not following this line of thinking. Is not, it's not, well, I'll just here's one more little bit about that I think is good too. The Spirit is moving at this moment of full divinity. At this moment of full divinity identified, God the Spirit is giving discernment of deception and bringing judgment on unfaithful actions. But God then turns the hands of Israel away from ancient killing gesture. There will be no stoning in the community of Christ. Only the Holy Spirit may draw back the breath of life. A line has been drawn that the followers of Jesus may not cross over. We are the people of resurrection, not death.
Death, right?
Yeah.
And
so I think that's interesting,
Yeah.
Yeah, and here's the line that you had raised up.
Yeah.
As well, and I don't remember whether that was your first question. Yeah, that was your first question. So this is what you sent out earlier. Jennings says the principle of the new community is that you belong to us, we don't belong to you. Yeah. is there any danger in the statement? What if the community loses focus? Yeah.
Just the fruitful thought.
No, I think that's right. I think it's, yeah. I mean, I think it's the question of what you mean by us, right? Yeah. And I think that's always what we're struggling with,
What does us mean? We know Jennings, because his concept is in terms of the community,
right,
being drawn together by the Spirit, bound in love, bound in self-sacrifice, for the good of all. But
right,
unfortunately, the church is taking this term "us" to be something different,
right,
at times.
Well, and I think it's and it's fundamentally, I think what the other aspect of this chapter that he keeps coming back to is that it's a community of discipleship. It's a community that is shaped by the person, the very body and flesh of Jesus, right? If the us is that community shaped by Jesus, then you belong to that, and we don't belong to you in any way. I mean, and in some ways I just think it's a nice turn of phrase that he probably that he probably wouldn't want us to take too literally, but I do think it does revolve around the us. What does that mean?
What does that mean?
Because I think it's, in the chapter, it's kind of like trying to have this ever expanding group. Right. Right. Yeah. So you're saying chapter 4 is really good for for Cheryl. And then this kind of seems to turn in, almost take things back to a more harsh Old Testament, in quotes, kind of sense. People have been forgiven for things that seem much more unforgivable to me. Yeah. I mean, I don't have any kind of, I'm not going to try to say that there's some kind of rejoinder to that strictly, but I think one thing we might ask in the text is are they seeking forgiveness? Are they interested in forgiveness? Obviously, if they were given a strict choice between death and pleading for forgiveness, they might choose asking for forgiveness. But yeah. No, it's an interesting question. I mean, it's like, we certainly can't imagine this being something that we would write about if something like this happened in our churches. We would, we would not, it wouldn't be something we would publicize, I don't think.
It's something that might, and I guess she's implying that would turn a lot of people off and say, hey, why would I want to belong to a community in which, the person they worship would take your life if you don't buy into that choice at that particular time.
Right. Yeah. I do think though that in some ways we are, maybe this story doesn't give us enough detail to really choose certain things, but I do think that if we look at communities that their very life and the life of the community itself depends on, trust and, being in strong community with each other and not betraying each other, that there are high costs for the community when people betray, the community itself or others in the community, and so in a way it's like, not that I'm saying yay or nay to any, to this story in particular, but I do think we are in a society, I think, that we choose our associations so freely and we, we can, we can be a part of this community. And if we don't like it anymore, we can go to this other community. We,
Yeah.
we just bop and weave wherever we want to. But if you, I mean, I think about, I think about like the Black Panther Party, I mean, when they started to infiltrate, and to, and the FBI and,
Yeah.
COINTELPRO, when they started bringing people in to, to infiltrate, to betray, to teach, to try to convince people that others were, I mean, all these things, this was the, the beginning of the end of that group, by sowing seeds of betrayal and mistrust, and then of course imprisoning and killing were
Killing,
I mean, so I mean that in some ways I think that we might consider how fragile the community was, and the pressures outside of it, and what it meant to know that you could trust that people were bringing themselves and everything to the table, to be, to share,
And maybe the implication is that maybe not to that extreme as we see in the text, but it may mean after the community makes diligent efforts to work with those who have some resistance, that those folks may have to be removed, maybe not to this extreme, but they may have to have to ask you to leave or whatever, but they might there might be have some discussion on that we might have to move these folks from the community. Because maybe not because they don't buy in, but they could be bringing, like you said, discord in terms of whatever, and not promoting an atmosphere of where we're trying to build trust. So,
I mean, and obviously, like, I think you can take it in a very metaphorical way as well, which I think he tries to do in a way a little bit, I'll say a little bit further on in the text. He says, the new family of God kills before it makes alive, tears open before it puts together, and returns to the shared life of the common. Born of baptism and confession, the intimacy stolen by the obsessive power of coupling. Modern coupling is especially dangerous because it claims to be the home of what Elizabeth calls the intimate event. I think what he's saying here, is that in a metaphorical way, whenever we enter a community like this that calls us to a certain type of discipleship and commitment to the community, the the notions of family, the notions of couples, the notion of even our notion of our own individual selves, the notions of nation, the notions of, that all of these notions are in a way have to be put to death, if we hold on to them in a way that inhibits the coming together and the community that's being formed. In a way, we're already, in a metaphorical way, harming ourselves and harming the community.
And I think we see that in the parables of Jesus, the one where God says, "Let me go bury my father." I mean, and I know that that's hyperbole, because certainly the community holds sacred the taking care of family and elders, but that in making that statement that Jesus said, "Let the dead bury the dead," I think Jesus was pushing forward using hyperbole that the focus is on the need of the community. So I think you're right. You're absolutely right.
I mean, this next paragraph here, he said, talking about the intimate event as this modern idea of the couple. The intimate event is a mode of organizing intimacy that invites us to imagine love as an act of choosing that exfoliates social skin and abstracts each of us from all other forms of connection in our loving and choosing love. I don't know. I just think that's a really, that's one of those lines, you kind of have to,
Yeah.
you kind of have to sit with for,
For a while.
we have to come back with it to,
Yeah.
in a couple weeks or,
Yeah.
or so. But I think there's a way of understanding. I like this term, social skin. And I'm not gonna even go there because it's a whole nother category of stuff I've been reading and thinking about. I mean, around the word flesh and social flesh, but this and I think you can kind of relate it in Christian terms to the idea of being a part of the same body. There's this broader thing that connects us all socially together as people of flesh. People who have flesh and consciousness and spirit, and and all these things. And there's a way in which our individuation at first line, and then secondly how it wants to make us take the couple in and become one in a way that breaks us from the rest of our social connections, whereas where that couple becomes our main focus of who our area of concern, who we're concerned about, kind of gets limited in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot here about that, that probably, we could, he's got a lot to say about that. But I do think it's interesting, because I know from the church's side that, for a long time, the church has struggled to be a good home to single people, and there's always this, there's always a lot attached to that, and there's always this kind of sense that, you need to be coupling, like you need, I mean, like really, I mean, like
you're right. You're right.
I mean, like, and it's almost as if, the church is there to facilitate that, I mean, like, I mean, and that's just what it's, and it doesn't have a vision for people.
And I think that's so interesting in that you say the church is there to facilitate coupling, but yet we struggle with intimacy and sexuality. So it's like we're pushing you to be together, but we're struggling with one of the very important things of being together, which is sexual relationships. So it's just like
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a whole nother. I mean, there's a lot tied up in all of that, I think. Yeah, because I think that and it's almost ironically because there's so much focus on the need for you to be in couples, and the undertone of that message is that, that's the only safe space to be having sex.
Right.
So you need to get in there.
And I was going to say, and you have to be the type of couple that's the norm too. If you're male, female, if you're
exactly.
No, not that type of couple. This is the type of couple you need to be into.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I think in a way it's like, if you and part of that is a failure to recognize that there are ways of being vulnerable and intimate with people that doesn't include sex.
Right.
You know, that's why they're always pushing you, if you're going to be in relationship with people, that you need to have a safe sexual partner so that we can be in community together, because there's some fear out there that there's no way that we could be in some kind of mixed hodgepodge groups where it's unclear who can have sex with who.
Yeah.
You know, like I mean, like that's a pretty deranged, setup when like, you have to be like, look, we have to get it very clear that we've gone through like extreme legal procedures to make sure that that this person's off limits. I mean, I mean that it certainly speaks of a certain failure of imagination and of how we might be together in a vulnerable, intimate way that does not automatically mean that there's sexual relationship involved. But I also hear you on the other side of that. But I think that the two things lead to each other, because if you can't understand the full range of vulnerability and intimacy outside of that, of sexual relationship, then of course, you're going to have trouble. You're going to struggle with that expression of intimacy and, and vulnerability as well.
And Darren, I mean, you just hit the nail on the head that we want to tie vulnerability, intimacy, just to sexuality, but we struggle with the whole concept of what it means to be vulnerable. I mean, we see that of course, that's evident in the life of Jesus' ministry. That he was ultimately vulnerable, up to death on the cross. But we struggle with this idea of we look at vulnerabilities as showing vulnerabilities as being as just pure weakness,
right.
And that's where someone like a Henry Now in his book, The Wounded Healer, really gets to those issues.
No, for sure. Yeah. Anyway, all right.
She's right. She's right. To unpack. I mean, that's one of the most neglected books in the Old Testament, along with Leviticus.
Well, yeah. It's interesting because I think I was looking the other day. It's I think, from my understanding, it is mid 4th century commentary on the Song of Solomon, where one of the first arguments, for the kind of universal evil of slavery is brought up in the church. There's, for up until that point, there's kind of these dancings around, it shouldn't be done, or it's not right, but not really full commitment in statements. But it's Gregory of Nyssa, I think, or Gregory of Nazianzus. One of those there. There's 3 brothers, or 3 folks all together there in Africa who and one of them comes up with this idea. The other 2 stick to the more Aristotelian line of everybody's born to a certain position. They need to stay in that position. But it's in commenting on Song of Solomon that and one of the comments about the slave or something like that this person. No, but I think it's definitely worthwhile to talk about. And it's interesting because obviously part of the problem is that the Bible outside of that doesn't offer us much 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 food for thought. Every positive thing has a little bit of a cringy element to it a little bit,
Yeah, whether it be like David and Bathsheba and that whole
right.
thing, or there's a little bit of soap opera stuff in there.
Yeah. It seems like you have a great relationship, and then you try to convince your wife to pretend like you're the sister, so that Pharaoh might want to marry you instead of kill me. I mean, it's a little bit sketchy throughout. And then, of course, I mean, there's like in the New Testament, we kind of get the kind of, there's a strong kind of call to celibacy in some, some texts, and so I think I think it'd be interesting in a way just to it'd be interesting in a way just to try to read just some regular text and try to find the intimacy and vulnerability in them. I mean, obviously there's so much in Paul where, he's in prison, he needs people to be with him and write to him and, stay close to, I mean, like, he has a lot of need for intimacy in general,
And I think that's where, the disciplines of pastoral care and psychology, psychotherapy really can help us out a lot to impact and help us to uncover the scars that many of us have in terms of dealing with this issue. I mean, because I think that's part of the problems. Some of us are so scarred and damaged that to even expose ourselves, which is what vulnerability is hurtful.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll obviously we'll have to come back to this chapter again, but I mean, to me, the thing that I think I keep kind of wrestling with is imagining how we might get, even in a small way, with I think even say you could even have 7 to 10 people who might come together and think about sharing all that they have in common, so that there would be no need, among you. And how to imagine that you have to, it does really go against all that we've come to understand about our us as couples, because it's like you're taught that this family unit is the unit, what I mean, that you are that's your community of concern,
right?
And so so I just think it's the chapters are really good. It's really just a kind of push in a direction to say, how might we think about this differently? How might we start imagining these different scenarios and see how uncomfortable they make us, and what we, and how we, how we think about how they would move forward. I mean, because to me, like, that's even just the beginning. I mean, to think about it in a church, I mean, a church, is really, everything is set up around, family couples, couple units, it's just hard,
I mean, and that's one of the things that's deeply ingrained in American culture. So this is this is counter American culture too. So that makes it even that much more difficult.
Yeah. We would have to maybe delve into family values, whatever that means.
whatever
that means. Right. Yeah. Well, Mark, I think this might be a good place to wrap it up with, since we'll come back to it, and we can Cheryl can prepare more questions. She'll get us
Tell her we're looking forward to join us one night.
right for sure.
Yeah.
And if I live nearby, I'd be looking for something made out of all those things I saw from your garden. But I don't live close to you, so I don't. So I'm not looking for I'd be waiting for the eggplant dish to show up at my house. But since I don't live nearby.
Do you want to meet next week? There's Labor Day. Do you want? Or how do you?
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, probably not. Let's skip one,
this
and
week?
then
Okay. All right.
yeah, because I might be out of town too, so I don't know if it might not work either way. So why tempt fate? Yeah,
Okay.
so let's we'll come back next in 2 weeks, and we'll stick with this chapter, and because there's that whole section about the family and marriage and discipleship.
Yeah, that whole piece
there.
And looking forward. Do you anticipate doing something different around Advent time, or?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. It's a good question. I don't know whether we'll. I don't know. I'm enjoying this. We might have to put it on pause.
I'm not saying this is not good, but
yeah, we might have to go to Mondays with Matthew. So
maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Very, very kind of you, Cheryl. All right.
Thank you, Cheryl.
I don't know if that's her sly answer to being invited on.
Yeah. I thought about that too.
All right. I'll see you in a couple weeks.
All right, in a couple weeks. Have a good holiday.
All right. You